Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it is a bird. It's the Quirky Bird Show with your host, Robin Savage.
Welcome to the Quirky Bird Show here on the artsradio.com, where we talk about all things quirky in the comedic world of, or the art world of comedy. I don't even know my tagline anymore. All things quirky in the artistic world of the comedic arts. Today we are talking about joke writing, and I always like to bring one of the better people in whatever the topics we have, and we have our good friend Steve Baird here today.
Thanks, Robin. Great to be here. Good to be on your show.
Oh, thank you. Later on, if I can get my computer working, later on we are going to be talking to Dr. Neil Linner. I'm sorry. I don't know if you know him. He's a very funny guy. He actually comedy writes for roasts. And,
great.
I think he's done some hoity-toity stuff that we'll
Nice.
ask him. He's often on the Howard Stern show, so being on my show is a big step up.
Well, you never know. I mean, he's had to start somewhere too, you know.
He did. Well, now, I always open with a quirky question of the day, and of course I can't get my computer working, but I want to give you the quirky question of the day. And my quirky question was, but what's your favorite style of joke? I think that's the gist of the quirky question of the day. Like a one-liner, a zinger, like a long-flowing story.
When I was growing up, one of my favorite comics was the Unknown Comic.
Was he the one who wore the
bag
over
over
his head?
head, right, yeah.
Okay.
And he just kept doing one-liners. Bam, 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 bam. And I really loved him more than anybody. I grew up listening to Bill Cosby and Smothers Brothers and George Carlin, of course, and I loved every comedian has their own different style. But I always liked the rapid fire, bam, 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 the one-liner type stuff.
You always like the one-liner?
Yeah, because when I was growing up, I wanted to be a stand-up since second grade. So all the joke books I read were usually a question and the answer was the joke.
Yeah,
so
sort of just the zingers, the one
premise, set up, punchline, all as quick as you could do it.
Absolutely.
And when I first started, I had to hear that constant laugh or it made me nervous.
See, and I want to go into that a little bit later on, because there is a theory in comedy about saying, like, there has to be like a laugh like every 8 seconds, or there's I think they try to put like science behind comedy, which I don't think can actually be done, because comedy is
it depends on the comedian. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at Bill Cosby, he's a storyteller, but he can kill because he paints a visual picture.
And I think also he puts laughs in the story. It's not like you go from A to laugh and it's
right.
long and drawn out. He sprinkles it in. Like
right.
Richard Pryor did that.
It's almost like he's a natural storyteller that's naturally humorous. And, a lot of it has to do, to be a good comic, I believe a lot of it has to do with your natural ability.
Absolutely.
I've seen comics that work at being funny, and then other ones that are naturally funny that work at being on stage. So it's kind of like that.
I think it's almost like singing, though. Like if you can't carry a tune, you can't be a singer. And I think everyone has a sense of humor to an extent. But if you're not funny, I don't think you can be a comedian.
Yeah, but there's a few of those floating around. But you know what? It's good that there's a stage as opposed to a mall and an Uzi, because there's a fine line between genius and insanity, and I've seen quite a few insane people on stage.
Well, and I digress, and I will get to the quirky question of the day, because I always tell people I'll shout out to them. But I do. There's a few people that I think are literally tone deaf to comedy, and I don't see it often. I see more people like the work ethic, like you work at something, you can get it. But there are a few people out there that I think almost sort of have like a tone deaf when it comes to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They think they did well, but in their mind, they think they did well, but in reality, they didn't.
Yeah.
And it's almost like there's no way to convince them that they didn't.
Or
even if they had a tape recorder running while they did the show, they still think they got laughs. I don't understand that.
Or if through the years they've never found the ebb and the flow. That's what I've seen. But right. I don't see that very often.
No, not very often. Usually the ones that don't get laughs get out pretty quick.
My first time.
But sometimes they'll stick around like glue. It's like, and then it gets to the point where this guy's so bad, you got to see him. He's hilarious. He's hilariously bad.
He's hilariously bad. Well, then that's almost your niche. Then.
Hey, the worst guy in the room's on stage, and everybody goes and watches him. They laugh at him.
Yeah. As long as it's laughs.
Yeah, exactly. And he'll think he killed. No. They're not supposed to laugh at you. They're supposed to laugh with you. There's the difference.
Real quick, I want to do the quirky question of the day. I always tell people I will give a shout out. Bill Sullivan, I met him. He's a civilian, as we say in the world
but
of comedy.
Still a comedy lover, obviously.
Oh yeah,
There's a million of those.
I was going to say this show's not just for the comedian; it's for the comedic nerd as well. He says, "I prefer one-liners on the hot topics of the day, and I like to eat zingers."
The zingers part I don't know about. I'm a ho-ho guy myself. I have 2 of them in my room at any one time. But anyway, I love the one-liners too. That's how I started. That's how I still do it. But now that I'm getting older, I'm learning to take it a little slower, and the absence of laughter doesn't frighten me as much as it did when I started.
Yeah.
So I'm actually doing a little bit longer setup, premise, punchline.
And embrace that silence.
Yeah, I embrace it as opposed to let it scare me, which it did when I started.
Yes, it
now,
did.
now that I'm old and I don't care anymore. So
And I have that problem, and I talk quickly anyway. So if any silence is there, I'm like, blah, blah, blah.
I know you walk. I know you're like me. I know and that's the way it is when you start. Once you do it a long time, you'll start to embrace that silence a little more. Some are quicker than others.
At embracing the silence.
I'm still like the one-liners. I like trimming the fat off a joke. Premise, setup, punchline. The quicker I can get to it, the better it is for me. It's just the way I've always written it.
Extra shout out to Kent Perry. He says, a joke done well, a story a la Bill Cosby or Andy Griffith. In less capable hands, they tend to turn into shaggy dog stories.
Exactly.
That is true.
Yeah, that's what I was saying
true.
earlier. You have to you have to naturally be. Richard Pryor is a perfect example. He was just naturally funny, and he could tell a story and visualize it and do these facial expressions and the voices and everything he did was genius. But you can't teach that to anybody. That's a natural talent. Same with Cosby, same with Carlin. I mean, Carlin was a writer too, but he still managed to make. He'd do some one-liners, but he still mixed it up with stories.
He did. I mean, he's almost like the only modern day prophet that we have. I mean, he did it, but then he did it with wisdom and his view of the world.
Right.
And, yeah, he was.
And he also made a lot of sense. I mean, he also carried a moral story with him. Which is the same with Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks is another. Most people don't know who Bill Hicks is.
That's
if you're
a shame.
comic, you do.
Yeah.
But he was brilliant too. I just wish he wouldn't have died so soon. But who knows where he'd be now? But he was obviously he affected a lot of comics.
Oh, absolutely. Also, shout out to Sean Purvis. Sean also agrees. He says stories are the best. You can incorporate a lot of humorous elements into the story without seeming forced and contrived. And that is true. And I think it goes to here's the beginning of the story, here's the end of the story. But if you put in the laughs, then it doesn't seem like maybe you're forcing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, just 2 more shout outs. And if anyone wants to contribute to the conversation, it's 727-597-4022. My good friend Long Island Mary.
Hey, was that the same number I put on my
It
Facebook?
was.
Thank God. Hey, somebody call pizza.
There's some old lady. Quirky bird, what? I'm calling the cops. My good friend Long Island Mary, she put an impromptu tag written while on stage. And that's a good point. Some of the best jokes just come while you're there.
Yep.
You're in the moment.
That's
boom.
happened to me a few times, quite a few.
Absolutely.
And I end up keeping it. That's a cool thing. Now, if you do something impromptu and it doesn't work, I won't keep it. But if it gets a big laugh, I go, wow, I'll just add that next time I go on stage.
Absolutely.
And it actually does become part of your act.
It becomes part of the act. The only time that's different is if the circumstance, like I've done that before, like the circumstance is so funny and you say something impromptu and it's really funny, and then you try to sort of recreate it the next time on stage. It doesn't work. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Sometimes like the one-liners are just good for that night. It's like McDonald's French fries. You can't reheat it. That's all you can.
I'll tell you the pressure is, and I did this about a month ago. I started on a premise and an idea, but I never had a punchline to it. And I was going through it, and then I got to the end, and I didn't have a punchline. I had to think of one right off the top of my head right then, and it worked. It killed. So now I'm keeping that joke. But I was afraid. I go, this is going to lie flat, or it might kill, and it ended up killing. So I go, great. I'm glad it didn't lie flat. Otherwise, I would have gone. So anyway, and moved on. But
so back to my good stuff.
And I go, and there's nothing that brightens a comic's eyes and going, wow, it worked, cool.
I know.
There's another couple of minutes I can add to my act.
Little explosions in your head. Very last shout out, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name. He's a new Facebook friend, and I just saw him at Side Splitters on Sunday. David Abolafia.
Ah, yes, I've seen him. He's a new guy.
Yeah, am I saying his name?
He just moved down here or something. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Abolafia.
I'm guessing.
Kind of looks like alfalfa. Albino alfalfa. I
was a proofreader for 3 years, and I'm having trouble with that.
He says, can't say that I have a preferred style. My basic set includes 3 lengthier bit stories, several one-liners, and a couple of zingers, but it's always nice to throw in something current, even a one-liner that an audience can relate to, particularly if it gives the audience the treat of hearing a new joke for the first time. And he actually brings up a valid point. It's just because you can mix it up. You can, you don't have to always be like a one-liner guy can tell a story, and a story guy can throw in one-liners.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's like interchangeable rifles back in the Civil War. You could take parts of one and put them together and make another one. That's kind of like with comedy. I mean, you can, if you do, especially with me, I do a bunch of one-liners, but it doesn't make any difference what order I do them in. There's one order I like to do it, and it flows better because I got callbacks and everything. But if I have to, I can mix it up, and it doesn't. Just so long as I remember where I'm at, because there have been a number of times where I'd repeat the same joke, and the audience would stare at me, and I know, did I do that one before? And they'd go, yeah. And I go, okay. Just want to make sure you guys are paying attention. So I still bail myself out even when I mess up like that.
I've got someone who actually just texted me about you. We're not. I don't even know these Facebook.
I know who this is.
Artie Woodry. He said Steve used to do a rim shot show. He would take a snare drum on stage and rim shot his one-liners. It was his best one-lining. It was funny when he wore pants. You have a lot of explaining to do, mister.
Artie's an old friend of mine. We started doing it about 28 years ago. And he's right. I used to go up on stage, and I had a drum and a snare and a shoulder strap. And I had my these really bad one-liners written down on the drum, so kind of like my notepad. Uh-huh. And I'd do my own rim shots. I'd go, brunch. And the audience would stare at me, man. And the audience would be in the back howling, just howling. And the audience was just staring at me. I only did it a few times. And they go, hey, how come you don't do that snare drum bit? I go, are you kidding me? The audience stares at me. You guys are the only ones that think it's funny.
See, you could have been like
that. But there's stupid jokes like, hey, what's brown, eats honey, and smells bad? Winnie the Poop. Ba-dum-tsh. And it was just a whole slew of those.
You got to laugh there.
Oh, out of your daughter. That's great. See? And I kept it clean. It's only a poop joke.
Anytime you could do a poop joke to a 6-year-old, you're rocking it.
I know. Well, I've done kids' shows before. Don't make me do boo-boo. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Yogi.
That was Yogi.
Yeah. Only Artie would know that. There's a few others that know that.
Well, now, when did you start comedy, Steve?
1984.
1984,
yeah,
wow.
Started in May of 84, and then 3 years later, I was on the road doing it for a living. That was back when there was a big demand and a low supply.
Yes.
And when I'd go to open mic nights, it would be, we played a place called Timothy's. It would seat about 200, 250 people, and it would be packed on a Monday night. Because you got to understand, this is before cable, this is before cell phones, this is before the internet. Nobody had anything to do. People were starved for entertainment. Mm-hmm. So just to get out of the house, even on a weeknight when they had to work the next day, there was no cover charge, but I think there was a 2-drink minimum. And the comics got 2 beers. And it was like the worst beer. It was worse than, I don't even remember the name. It was Leinenflugel or some, weird, it made Pabst Blue Ribbon taste like champagne. That's how bad this beer was. But every week we get to do our jokes, and you know immediately.
Beer when imported beer was bad.
Yeah, it was imported from like Yugoslavia. But back then you could do a joke. You'd know if a joke worked because there was a crowd there. Mm-hmm. And you'd know immediately it'd work, and then you'd try it the next week, and then new stuff with it. And then you do the following week and do the stuff that worked the weeks before, and then just kept building. And that's how I built my act. But nowadays, it's you don't have the crowds you used to because there's so much different forms of entertainment out there.
It is. There's a lot of things competing for their attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But back then, nobody had anything to do. So
we can throw rocks, or we can go to the comedy show.
I can beat you up again, or we can get out of here.
Now, I remember one time after an open mic, you and I were talking, and you said that when you were a kid, you bought a joke book. Like you used to, something about your parents used to help your parents' printing company.
Yeah.
And you would buy a joke book, and that's how you learned to write like a really good joke.
Yeah, my parents owned a typesetting company, so they couldn't afford a babysitter, so they'd take me to the graphic arts area, and they let me play with letters and words all day long. Yeah. You know, so I just played with words since I can remember, and words are like pieces of puzzles to me. I mean, I can put them together and make a good joke and switch things around. I can start with the punchline and end with the premise, or I just mess around with it. But
okay, so to you, it's the words. It's a love of words and what you can do with the words.
I'm a wordsmith. I'm a pun meister and a wordsmith. Yeah, I guess you could. I love a good pun if it's well done.
Well, you really are, and you had mentioned it earlier. You trim the fat off a joke. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good comics in Tampa, but I think as far as a writer, you're probably the best because you don't leave, like if you and I know.
Thank you, Robin. I didn't know you thought that way. Really?
I do. I heard one time to say to take a highlighter, write your joke down, and then highlight the stuff that you don't really need. And I would bet you wouldn't highlight a whole lot of stuff on your joke because you don't waste words.
Well, as somebody else said, I highlighted with a black magic marker. It's not mine. I actually wrote that joke, and I heard another comic do it. I think it was, I don't know who did it, but I go, damn, there goes that one. So if I hear somebody else do a joke that I've written that I haven't done yet, then I'll drop it because obviously they'll think I took it from them. But no, I've got tons of material that's recorded from years ago that, as a matter of fact, I've been starting on this week that I'm writing, actually putting on paper.
Okay.
I recorded it probably 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
About 8 different micro cassettes full of material I can't even remember recording. And I'm going to listen back to them and write them down. So I'll have a whole bunch of stuff to weed through and edit and rewrite. And
it's amazing because there's times like I look through old notebooks and I see a joke that I've written. I'm like, that's hilarious. Or the opposite. I see a joke that I've written. I'm like, I know why I stopped doing that now.
Right.
But sometimes if you let jokes stew, you can
That's what I'm saying. Never throw a joke away. Now, when I did it, when I first started, I had 2 categories. I had keepers and not keepers yet. Mm-hmm. And I would put the ones that didn't work in the not keepers yet, and the ones that worked, I'd keep in the keeper file. Well, then later on, you never know when you might write a joke that'll go hand in hand with one of the non-keeper jokes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it'll give you an idea. Well, I could put this together and then you try it out. Plus, the longer you do stage time, the easier it is for you to feel better about doing stand-up.
I know
the jokes will work better for you than it did when you first started.
I was going to say there's a few that I resurrected, and it wasn't so much the joke. I think it was me, and like you say, going out and trimming the fat. It's like, well, if it's a Home Depot joke, you don't need to talk about how you were wearing like a blue shirt, like you know what I mean?
Right.
Get to the funny fast.
Yeah, premise, setup, punchline. That's what Jay Leno taught me once. Steve. It's a premise, setup, punchline. That's all there is to it. That's all a joke is. And if you watch the show, that's exactly what it is. Hey, did you hear in the newspaper? Premise. Oh, this lady did this setup, and then punchline.
And then you.
And that's the way Letterman writes. That's pretty. If you watch any major comedian, it's premise setup, punchline.
Joke. Yeah, or punch. Yeah. Real quick, your friend Artie said Stroh's was the beer.
No, Artie. I would have drank in Stroh's, man. But no, it was, I remember it had about 18 letters in it. It was like a Leinen Flirkrockable. It wasn't even a Leinenkugel. I would even drink one of those. It was something I've never heard of before or since. They might have moved up to Stroh's a little later on in the year.
They were getting fancy with the Stroh's.
Yeah. Well, Timothy, the guy that owned the bar at the time, it was funny. he'd water it down like somebody'd order a Jack, and he'd fill the Jack bottle full of cheap whiskey. And when the guy goes, "This isn't Jack," he'd complain. He'd boot him out of there. But the guy would water down the liquor and change liquors. It was hilarious. Oh, he's a blowing alcoholic. He was a full-blown alcoholic.
Yeah.
And he was drinking everything and just replacing it with the crap. He would go, "This isn't Jack." He goes, "Came right out of the bottle. It says Jack." "No, this isn't Jack. Get out of here. You're banned. You can't come back anymore." Needless to say, it closed.
Yeah. It's surprising with that good of business sense that it wouldn't,
I couldn't believe
still
he
be
did.
open.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I'd heard it from too many people.
Now, you not only are you a comic, you said that you've actually joke written before, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Is it hard to write jokes for other people?
I actually wrote for a Bill Clinton impersonator back in the mid-'90s when he was still president. And I don't do political humor in my act. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was really weird because I'm used to talking and doing it and getting the immediate response. Mm-hmm. But when you're writing it for somebody else, you're going, "Well, I think it's funny, but I don't know if it's funny or not because I'm not really the judge. It's the audience that is." So I would charge him $50 a page. It was double-spaced type, inch margin all the way around. And I'd crank out like 4 a week, make 200. He'd send me a check for $200, and
wow,
I'd never see his act. And then I went on for months, and I go, "Well, wait a minute, this better be funny, or else he's just blowing $200 a week."
And
so, but I didn't know which ones were funny or not.
You just sent it to him because that's what I don't know if I heard someone do my joke, I don't know if I'd get all like Woody Allen and be like, "You're supposed to like have the beat there, and then you're not doing the punchline fast enough," or you know what I mean? Like it'd almost be putting like your baby up for adoption.
I know.
Like, hold his head.
But as long as you never held the baby, what the heck? I never even saw it, even as a fetus. So go ahead and take it. I don't care. I have no attachment to that whatsoever.
No attachment to the Bill Clinton joke.
Exactly. Now, you're right, but I never saw his act. If I saw his act do the jokes I wrote, sure, there's probably timing issues and things like that that he could have worked on. I probably would have gone, "Well, here's where you need to, you know." But luckily, I didn't have to do that because I would have had to charge him more money. But he evidently figured it out on his own. He was doing stage time. And somebody called somebody in town and recommended who could write for me, and my name came up, so that's how it started.
Well, since he was a Bill Clinton impersonator, did you try to write with like Bill Clinton's voice or the persona of what people thought Bill Clinton was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd read the newspaper and what Bill Clinton did that day. Mm-hmm. That's how I got my jokes, you know. And there's always some in the newspaper about what Bill Clinton did that day.
Oh, even if he hasn't been president for 20 years.
I know. Well, any president.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I'd take what they did and I'd just think of something funny that, you know. I remember one joke, it was something about him going to Yellowstone. And Yellowstone Park, Clinton went to Yellowstone Park. And he went to this rock and peed on it and goes, "Now I know why they call this Yellowstone." I pictured him saying that. And I'll bet you that was one of the jokes that worked, as stupid as it sounds. But I don't know. It was what was weird. I'd write pages and pages and pages of stuff and charge them a flat rate per page, and I had no idea which joke worked.
Which joke worked and which joke didn't.
I think, well, something's got to work, otherwise he wouldn't be cranking out $200 a week for like months.
Yes,
As a matter of fact, it was me that said, "Look, I don't have time for this. I got comedy clubs to do. I got to cut a line." And I think back and go, "What was I thinking? I should have kept riding that little cow to the little president."
Yeah, the cash cow.
Yeah, and he was charging big money though. Because you know he's going in as a Clinton impersonator.
Oh yes,
and he had a
90s.
threefold brochure and collar where he's shaking hands with Newt Gingrich and everything. Now I'm thinking, hell, they can get the real Bill Clinton for what he's charging. So I knew his career was going to be a short-lived one. You know, I don't know what he's doing now, but.
I wouldn't think it would be like as prevalent to be a Bill Clinton impersonator, but I would imagine you could still get work.
Yeah, he probably still is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You know, I don't know. What do you charge if somebody hadn't been president that long? You know, 15 years, 20 years. I don't even know how old he was. But yeah, I don't know. He might still be. I know his name, and I had to type it on and see what he's doing. But he was an assembly line worker before Clinton was president.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, but he
wow.
looked. I mean, he's only 25, but he would do makeup with his hair, make it white, and he'd add he had a little vest that he wore that added weight to him. and
Oh.
he looked dead on.
He did.
And he talked like him, too. So he looked dead. I even had a couple of fake Secret Service agents come in the room. He come into the comedy club, and I go, what's going on? These two secret, and he comes up, and I'll tell you what, he's a dead ringer. He ended up being in a movie with Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Playing Bill Clinton.
Wow.
And I can't remember in the room. It was something 2000. That's all I know. But he ended up being in the movie, but I haven't heard from him since.
Now, you talked a little bit about how the comedy scene had changed. Since you've been in comedy so long, do you see that there's any trends in the actual joke writing? Do you think the jokes have gotten shorter? Do you think they've gotten longer?
No, I think it's all the same.
Do you?
Yeah, it's the same as it was when I was younger. I mean, people laugh at the same stuff.
I noticed when I go to different areas of different areas of the country, I've noticed there's different styles. Like, I think people in Florida tend to be the quicker, the one-liners, the rat-a-tat-tat comedians.
Oh, I know what you're getting at.
But
If you're talking about traveling.
Yeah, but I've noticed, like, in the Midwest, because we're both you're from Indiana, I'm from
Right.
Missouri, and I've noticed the people, and not necessarily where they're from, but where they're from comedically. Like, comedically, I'm a Florida comic. That's where I learned my chops.
Right.
But I've noticed, like the Midwest folks, they tend to be longer in the setups. They tend to have a more flowing, and I don't know if it's just how they learn comedy or just because Midwestern people are.
I don't know. I did my one-liners back then.
Oh, and I think they get a good response from that. But I was just noticing, like, other comedians in other areas, I think, tell jokes
Could
differently.
be. Could be. In my later years, I started getting bitter and sarcastic.
No.
And then I started.
A comic
Then I
was
moved
mean.
to. Then I moved to the East Coast, and I absolutely killed in the East Coast. I thought I did well in the Midwest, but I absolutely killed in the East Coast because everybody that's there is bitter and sarcastic. So I fit right in. They loved me. But I do well anywhere I went. That's why I wrote my act that way. I could pretty much travel anywhere and be funny, but. Yeah, funnier in some places. I'd slow it down in certain states. I'd just talk slower.
But I agree. I think funny is funny. Okay. I think funny is funny, but as far as the other comics, I do notice like a certain it's almost like how people have different accents from different
Yeah.
areas. I think the comics sort of
I think you're
have
right.
different ways of I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just been my
Yeah,
little
Florida's kind of
observation.
weird, though, because everybody from here ain't from here. So you get a mix mash of everything, It's
Oh,
it's fun.
absolutely.
It's so funny,
Yeah.
So, Florida's cool because you don't know what to expect.
You don't. You never know what to expect in Florida. But yeah, I mean, I have noticed sometimes I think maybe like, and this is just my theory, I think sometimes like our jokes get a little bit quicker just because people don't have the attention span. Like, I don't know if a Richard Pryor or a Bill Cosby, maybe their time was, or their joke style was for the time. It seems like now I can't even like talk to you without looking
I
at
read
the
it.
million things.
Thanks, Artie.
You know what I mean? And I'm thinking maybe that's why maybe one-liners are more prevalent, but they did used to do one-liners in vaudeville and stuff
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
too.
But I don't know. I grew up reading one-liner books, man, and I read joke books since I was in second grade, and most of them were limericks or one-liners.
Okay, what was a couple of your favorite jokes from those joke books?
Oh man, I read so many of them. That there's there was one that was called "The World's Sickest Jokes." They were sick jokes. And it's like, "Mommy, am I a werewolf? Shut up and comb your face." "Mommy, am I a vampire? Drink your soup before it clots." Stuff like that. There's a
I
million.
remember those jokes.
Yeah.
Shut up and
Hey,
comb your face.
I mean, and it was, can the Tommy come out and play? Kids, he has no arms and legs. I know we want to use him for third base. those those kind of jokes are the ones I read. Hey, if you fall off that rock and break your leg, don't come running to me. Remember all that was the stuff that I read as a kid. So I love that
Yeah.
and Mad Magazine, and then I read
I
Mad
love Mad
Magazine
Magazine.
constantly, and then I went to National Lampoon magazine, which totally really warped my sense of humor. Because they had nothing was sacred with them, nothing, and they made fun of God and Jesus and you name it, they made fun of it. And,
Yes.
and they had brilliant writers. P.G. O'Rourke, from Saturday, wrote a lot of the movies. Ivan Reitman, all the guys that wrote for Saturday Night Live, Donahue, Mike Donahue, all those guys wrote for Saturday Night Live when it came on the air. And that's when Belushi and Chevy Chase were doing Lemmings, the play for National Lampoon. So it was during that time period I was reading that stuff.
Okay, my phone's going. This is
Hey, I think it says in the lobby, turn off your cell phone.
I think it's super classy. Actually, speaking of phone calls, I think we do have. We're calling our people right now. Sorry, who's ever calling me. I'm actually on the air. As I say, we have a call-in guest, and he's a very, very talented guy. His name is Dr. Neil Berliner. Neil, you on the phone?
Yeah.
Hey, Neil, thank you so
Robin, how you
much.
doing?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
Very good.
Hi, Neil. How are you?
Hey.
Neil, we have Steve Baird with us. I don't know if you've been watching the show. He's a comedian here in Tampa. He's been doing comedy for a while, and he's been doing comedy writing for a while now. Now, Neil, how long have you been involved in the comedy writing?
Well, I don't want to give away how old I am, but probably 20, 30 years already.
20, 30
Oh,
years.
good.
Now, you're a comedian, but you also write, and you also punch up other people's stuff, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how did you get involved in the comedy writing and helping other people with their comedy writing?
Let's see. Well, started writing in college, and nobody took too much notice. I actually got a big break about 1999 when I saw this act in New York. An old lady named the Rapping. She didn't call herself Fruity Nut Kid, the Rapping Granny. And I just walked up to her after her act, and she had a nice act, and it was kind of clean, and I made it, a lot edgier and dirty and sexier. And about 6 months after she started using my stuff, we got a call from Howard Stern, and she became a regular guest on the Stern Show. She made about 15 appearances from 1999 till about 2008. And she's a member of the famous Whack Pack, and I got to know everybody at the Stern Show, and one thing leads to another, and people would see my stuff, and one big break like that is enough to propel you to be able to write for lots of people and do lots of events. So I've been very lucky in that way.
Now, we were talking earlier about like joke styles. What's your favorite joke style? Do you like the like Steve? Do you like the more the quick one-liner or the story
I would
type
think
joke?
like anything funny would be my style. Anything that works. Anything that works. It doesn't matter.
That's right.
I mean, I do a course on joke writing. I plug that. I will plug that at the World. I'm going to be doing it at the World Series of Comedy in Vegas in September at their main event. I've done it, in New York and 2 other places, and I divide the jokes into different categories. And it really doesn't matter, what category the joke is. It matters if it's a quality joke, if it's a well-written type joke from any category, and if it's well delivered, then it'll do well. So, do I have a favorite type of joke? Maybe the reverse joke where you're expecting one kind of, where you lead the crowd one way, and then you turn around and give them the exact opposite of what they expected.
Yeah, Neil,
That's pretty popular.
I kind of explain that like when you're racing down a street and there's a T and people think you're going to go right, you hang a left.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah, I agree.
That's absolutely right.
Yep.
Now, Neil, it's your birthday today, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, Facebook, what a thing. I've never had so much attention in one day. I think. I mean, there are more people on Facebook talking about me than will have my bar mitzvah. Like 200 people. It's really wild. I mean, I feel very depressed tomorrow when I'm back to my normal 2 responses to everything.
You feel like a celebrity with the birthdays on
Well,
the
yeah.
Facebook.
I mean, I got comedy writers, comedians, friends. And it's dynamite. It's very ego gratifying.
Now, Neil, you're also a psychiatrist as well as a comedy writer. How did you sort of meld the two? I mean, which came first, the comedy or the?
Everybody always asks me that question, Robin. I always wanted to be a doctor, but I always knew I was a funny person. I never really, I was never really like a class clown type because I was trying to do well academically. So I was never the kind of kid who would make a fool of himself in school. But I would sort of like, whisper to the kid next to me something funny. He'd get in trouble or she'd get in trouble. But I was never known as the class clown.
You were the writer for the class clown.
I'm sorry?
You were the writer for the class clown.
That's right. Well, exactly. Right. So, I went to med school and became a psychiatrist. And people ask me, does psychiatry give me more material or anything? I think psychiatry is good for comedy just because you're talking to people all the time and you're learning about relationships, and you have to understand relationships to be able to write good jokes, I think. You have to understand what makes people tick and interrelate, and then when you can do that, you can reach an audience. So I think in that way, psychiatry has helped me hopefully write better jokes.
I never thought about it like that, because you're right. I mean, it's about relating to the audience
Right.
and kind of finding the commonality in everyone. So I never, yeah.
Right. I mean, you can never reach anybody. I mean, everybody in an audience. Like, I've seen the top guys, I've been backstage, for many of the top people, and you look out at the audience, and, 20% of the audience won't get any particular joke. I think you have to play to the high end. You can't dumb down your stuff. You have to play to the high end and, have the smarter people explain the joke to the less smart people. It can't really be your problem, if somebody doesn't get a joke.
There you go.
Now
he's talking.
I love that answer.
Now, when you're writing for television, that's a different story.
You got to dumb it down a
You
little.
absolutely have to dumb down. Like Arrested Development, for instance. Good comedies go off the air because they're too bright for a lot of people. So
Right.
there's a fine balance, I think. It depends on what you're trying to do. But for stand-up, I think you really have to, go for the high end.
That is true, and I love that theory, although sometimes it's a little bit hard if you're playing a bar gig because maybe there's no one to explain it to the other people.
I mean, look, why do comedy clubs exist in the first place? It's basically to sell alcohol, and
Absolutely.
if they can do some, you're the draw, but alcohol is probably a bigger draw. So
Well, and you basically just keep
It's
them in their
difficult,
seat
right?
for 90 minutes. Like that's what a comic's job is doing, to keep them in their seat to bend the elbow.
yeah.
I'm making it such a fun show. We're all just alcohol pushers.
Yeah.
Well, now, Neil, what were some of your comedy influences growing up, or even today?
Okay, well, when people ask me that, I think in terms of baseball, because if you ask somebody like who the best baseball players are, you say, well, you can't compare today's ball players to the ball players of other eras. So I think you have to compare comedians and comedy writers within their own time frame. So, like, for instance, in the 60s, let's say, I would have liked Woody Allen and Alan King and Jackie Mason, those kind of guys. Even a guy named, what's his name? London Lee, who is, you know who London Lee is? You do, Robin.
I was going to say, when I met you,
Yeah,
I
he was
met
down in
London
Florida.
Lee. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, London Lee, for people who don't know, was a great comedian who appeared approximately 40 times on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he opened for the Beatles for their first appearance in America. And Mick Jagger was at that show, actually, backstage, and he liked him so much that he had London open for the Stones as well.
Oh,
so he's
my
the only
goodness.
comedian in history to have opened for both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, which is pretty amazing. And he had this act that he was this rich kid. Actually, he was. His parents became millionaires and did this whole act. But he was another one of my influences in the 60s, and then I wound up actually opening for him a couple of years ago. So, decade. I look at it decade by decade. Steve Martin came after that. I don't know who else. Robert Klein was one of my idols, and then you get into the Seinfelds and those kind of guys. So I think it goes decade by decade, more or less. Now, who do I like? I like people like of course, Jim Gaffigan, and I like John Oliver.
Oh, yeah.
I like all the Daily, the Daily Show crowd, all those guys, Wyatt Cenac, and I hang out a lot in New York. I spend my time between New York and Florida every week, so I go to a lot of little shows. I like Todd Barry a lot. He's become a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, Todd's funny.
So
Y-
Todd's great.
Yeah, I just saw him on Letterman the other night. He's funny.
You were
Yeah, yeah.
you were talking
Yeah.
about the
Actually, I was kidding. Was he good on Letterman? Because
Yes.
I fell asleep. I feel bad that I'm saying this, but I wanted to watch just to see him and like.
Oh yeah,
else. I
he
had
was
to-
great. He was absolutely
Yeah, he's
fantastic. Yeah, he's a funny guy, man. I like
Todd
Todd Barry.
Barry.
Oh yeah.
now
I'll
Neil.
tell you a funny story about Todd.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll tell you a funny story about Todd Barry. After I had introduced myself to him a couple of times, I saw him at a couple of places. I'm a big fan of Amy Mann. You know who she is?
I'm sorry, who?
She is Amy Mann's a singer. She was in the group called Till Tuesday. She had a monster worldwide smash hit called Voices Carry.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And okay, so that's Amy Mann. She's an incredibly talented songwriter and singer. And a lot of comedians like her. And she did a tour a couple of years ago where she would have, in between her songs, she would have famous comedians do her banter. In other words, she didn't want to be bothered talking to the audience, so she would bring out like Andy Kindler and different guys. I think Todd Barry was one of them. So I went to see Amy Mann in New York about a year ago, and this was at the City Winery, a beautiful new place. And so I'm watching Amy Mann, and then after the show, I go down to the men's room, and this guy says to me, "Hey Neil, how you doing?" It was Todd Barry. So I'm thinking, well, I finally made it on some level because somebody famous just recognized me in a bathroom. That was my considering myself being somebody. So,
Now,
anyway, what were we talking about?
I just saw a recent Facebook post of yours. And because you do roast writing and punch up writing, and you're, as a charitable act, you're offering to help one roast per month. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I decided that every month I would write for a legitimate charity project, a comedy project. So the first month was last month, I believe, and I wrote for the American Cancer Society. Chris Mad Dog Russo? Mike and the Mad Dog, famous sports show.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, they're DJ guys.
Everybody knows. Okay, so I wrote for that roast, and so I decided, this is pretty cool. Let me help out. Let me give back a little something. And so I decided that every month I would write for one charity project. So,
Well, how did you
yes.
how did you get into the roast writing?
Oh, well, the first roast I ever wrote for, I was hanging around the Howard Stern show, and Artie Lang had seen some of my stuff, and he said, "I want you to write for my roast," his roast on the Howard Stern show. So, I'm sorry, that's wrong. The first roast I wrote for was on the Howard Stern show, but it was for the limo driver on the show. There's a guy who drives Howard around. So I wrote material for the rapping granny for that one, and she really killed with it. And Howard was very surprised, and he was very impressed with it. So after that, Artie came up to me and said, "Look, I want you to write for my roast on the show." So I wrote for that one. After that, on the Stern show, I wrote for the Andy Dick roast, and there was one other on the Stern show. Oh, the Gary Delabate, the Baba Booey roast. So I wrote for 4 roasts on the Stern show, and then I wrote for the Mario Batali roast, and then I went up to Comedy Central for the Shatner roast and the Flavor Flav roast. So one thing led to another.
Oh, so you help with the Comedy Central roasts as well. You help with the Comedy Central roasts as well?
Yeah. I wrote for 2 of those. I wrote for some more on the Flavor Flav roast, and I was on the I was writing for the Shatner roast as well. And then actually Facebook has helped me a lot. I mean, just putting my jokes out there. Young guys ask me, like, how do you get to write for all these different things? And I said, look, you got to put your stuff out and just let people see what you can do. Mm-hmm. Because most of the jokes that we write, I think, are throwaways. They're just like, if they're current event jokes, for instance, if they're monologue kind of jokes, they don't have a shelf life for more than a few weeks usually.
Right.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
So,
new events.
You can't sell. I mean, if you're not famous, you can't sell anything to anybody. So my advice is just to Show people what you can do. Instead of saying I'm doing an open mic, in some town where you're at, put a joke up. Give people a reason to want to be interested in you. So I write jokes every day. I put them on Facebook, and that led to the talent director of the comedy talent director of one of the major late night shows that you all know, recommended me for projects. So I got a call about 8 months ago from a comedian who said, I have all these events coming up in 1 month. I can't write for them all, and I was recommended to you by this guy on one of the network late shows. So I was stunned by that, and the only way he could have known about my material was from Facebook.
Oh, wow.
So Facebook, I think it's a good tool, if you're trying to get known more. I mean, what are you going to do with your material anyway when you're unknown?
That is.
And everybody steals from people steal from people. I mean,
Yep.
People steal from you, but what are you going to do? You're not going to get an attorney to, what are you going to get $15 back for a joke and pay an attorney, $2,000? I don't think that's happening so fast.
Well, I was going to say,
So,
I do know people who specifically don't do Facebook because they're worried they're going to steal it. But you're right. If you're doing stuff about the Olympics, it's not going to be funny 2 years from now or even 6 weeks from now.
Also, if you have talent, you either have talent or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And if you have talent, it's not going to disappear. Unless
That's
you
right.
do a lot of drugs.
Yep.
Or something happens to you or something. Okay? So if you have talent, you have to keep producing anyway. All right? Even if you get popular or get known, you're only as good as your last gig, basically.
Yep.
Everybody always has to come up with new material. Either material you buy from somebody or material you do yourself, you write yourself. So I don't see what people are afraid of, And you know what? I've had jokes stolen that went to major shows, okay, verbatim, word for word, complicated jokes that went, to late night shows. And at first I was really annoyed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got kind of flattered by it. At least it proved to me that, okay, at least I have, some degree of talent to be able to have, to be stolen from, I mean, if you put your jokes on Facebook and nobody steals them, then what does that tell you? So,
it's like leaving your keys in a shitty car.
And my point is that if you do have some talent, then it's not going to disappear on you. So you might as well. It's like your calling card. It's like your resume, your CV. It's your way to get out there. Facebook is a way for people all over the place to see what you can do. So that's what I would recommend to people.
I was going to say that's really interesting. I never thought about it in those terms before.
Yeah, I haven't either, Neil. I think you talked me into starting to crank out daily stuff now. I've been putting it off for a while.
About time. I see some material out of you too.
Well, you have a lot of funny Facebook posts. I mean, sometimes I'll like them or add to them, but then I don't always want to seem like a creepy stalker. But you do. You always have at least one or two jokes about something interesting or something that's happening now in the world.
One or two jokes out of how many? 50, 70?
At least that I see on Facebook.
Well, you should. You see, I judge I write for a late night show in L.A. that's on DirecTV and Comcast and all the carriers called the John Kerwin Show, and I like to see people's reaction to my jokes. So if you like a joke, I wish you would click on it because the jokes that I think are good that I write, I get more of a response to usually. The jokes that I think are so-so get a so-so response. But that's another value of Facebook, I think, that you can gauge your material based on what your followers think. So if you have 2,000 people, 2,000 Facebook friends, you get 50 of them liking a joke versus 2 for another joke. It can direct you in a way. It's feedback. I mean, it's valuable feedback.
Absolutely. I also I just missed you. I went to Fort Lauderdale. There was a comedy. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. But there was you did a writing in Fort Lauderdale in January at.
That's the course I'm doing in Vegas. It's called Anatomy of a One-Liner: Writing Roast and Monologue Jokes, and it goes over different categories of jokes and. it's interactive, so the comedians get to bring in jokes of theirs that they don't think are their best joke, and we improve the jokes. We analyze them. See, the point of all this is that, let's say there are 8 categories of jokes, okay? You have to be able, or it's to your advantage to see what category each joke is in, to dissect your jokes, and to see what's funny, and then to be able to replicate. In other words, you think of the best 5 jokes in your set, and go and say to yourself, well, what's the formula for these jokes? What is good about these jokes when I analyze them? If you do that, then eventually, naturally, you'll be able to write more jokes that are good in that way. Different jokes, but similar in their good components. Okay, so in other words, you're sort of like creating a formula for what funny is. What works best for you. So that's why it's valuable to people, I think. To be able to analyze. Because, some people just think, well, funny is funny. If it's funny, it's funny. That's not true. All right? There's a reason. There are reasons why jokes are funny, why, people react to things, why people react to certain comedians, why certain comedians go to the top and others don't. They don't go anywhere. Because they understand, or I think on some kind of level anyway, they have to understand, what funny is. It's not just random. I guess that's my point.
Now, what you also punch up people's jokes. What do you find that you have to do the most in cleaning up someone's joke or making a joke funnier, like that you haven't written that you punch up?
Okay, well, most jokes are too long, for instance. There's too much verbiage. There's too much, if you're going to do a long story for the sake of doing a long story, and then there's some kind of, reverse at the end, then fine, if that's the purpose, to keep the crowd hanging. But most regular, run-of-the-mill jokes are just too long. They're not worded well. And the punchline, I don't even use the word punchline in my course. In my course, I don't use the word punchline. I use the word punch word.
Punch word?
Okay? Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the punchline is basically just a word or two. And most people don't even know where to put it. They put it in the middle of the joke sometimes. So I shouldn't say most people, some people. The punchline has to come at the end, or the punch word has to come at the end always. You have to work to make it, you have to build up the tension enough, okay, and then hit the crowd with the punch word. And a lot of younger comedians, they are funny people, but they don't really, they haven't really cultivated their ability. And they just don't know that these are basic things. If you think about it, there's no real school, or there wasn't any real school, let's say, 20 years ago. If you wanted to be a comedian, what would you do?
Yeah, you hit the road.
Yeah.
Open mic.
The road.
Yeah.
And there weren't many comedy clubs 20, 30 years ago, It's not like it is today. Every little dumpy town has a comedy club. What town are you in? No, I'm just kidding.
Dumpy town.
So there are a lot of people who are would-be comedians out there, thousands and thousands of people, and it's a big business now. And you have to get an education. You have to use some kind of system, I think, to cultivate your profession. So these courses are popping up all over the place. There are books now, and I think you owe it to yourself as a comedian to educate yourself, rather than just trying to do it on your own, because in any profession, you need training, you need an education, and this is no different.
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree.
Well, you know what, Neil?
What have you guys done? Yeah, sorry.
Hey, I've been doing this for 28 years. I started in '84, so I learned the hard way. But I'm also a pretty good writer, actually. So, but I know exactly what you're talking. I remember talking to Leno, and you were talking about the joke stealing. He goes, you're gonna have people stealing your jokes, no doubt. He goes, you just got to write more than they can steal. You can only take a cup out of a well.
That's true.
So I actually use that as my Bible. So I was constantly writing new material when I was traveling. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, he's absolutely right.
You know what? This has been awesome. I've got the people in the booth giving me finger signals, which means
and it's the middle one.
it's the middle one. Neil, we do have to go. We got folks in the booth telling me to wrap it up. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to put out there?
Okay. NeilBerlinerComedy.com. If anybody needs any mentor to work with, I guess, if you want to use that word. And on Twitter, I'm the joke writer, so I'd appreciate people following me. And follow me on Facebook. And I'll see you at the World Series of Comedy in September as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Neil. I appreciate it for being on here. I'd love to have you back again. I could have just picked your brain the whole time.
Hey, Neil, I'm Steve Baird, so I'll friend you at Facebook tonight.
Sounds good, Steve. Thanks a lot.
All right, man.
Okay, thanks a lot, Neil.
Okay, Robin. Take care, huh?
Oh, you too. Real quick, anything you want to push? I know both you and I have different gigs, but at
All right.
Houdini's
Well,
Pizza.
I'm going to be at Niagara's Tap this
yeah, that's
Friday
right.
at 7 p.m. in Largo, beautiful Largo.
Beautiful Largo,
And then I'm going to
Florida.
be at B.J. Odom's Houdini's Pizza in Cape Coral next Saturday night.
And I'll be there this coming Saturday. So
Yeah, look up Houdini's Pizza on Facebook or Google, and you'll be able to get the directions there and showtime.
okay. Any Facebook websites? Anything you want to plug?
No,
Okay.
Just
Well,
me.
thank you guys very much. This has been another Quirky Bird show. Next week, my guest right here is going to be the lovely Karen Fitzgerald. So look forward to that.
Cool.
All righty. Thank you very much. We'll
Good
see you
night.
next Tuesday.
Good night, all.
Good night.